This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a soul-led leadership coach to women in midlife who are wanting more meaning in the second half. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Episode 145. Have you ever wondered what your inner power may look like as an animal? Well, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/quiz and you can find out. It's just a quick 2-minute quiz that I created for you. This is a topic that comes up so often in my coaching work with women where they stand in their power and feeling empowered. And so you can head over there, NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/quiz and check this quick little thing out for you. And if you want more tips and information, you can just sign up after you take the quiz. Well, welcome, sisters. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this conversation. My guest today is Carolyn Wood, and she is an introvert who supports other introverts to build successful businesses that work for them rather than take over their lives. She does this through helping them put in place great business models and demystifying the numbers. Carolyn is a corporate escapee, having spent 20 years working as a chartered accountant working for large businesses and not-for-profit. She has wound her way around the world working in Australia, which is her home country, the UK, Namibia, and Laos. And I'm so excited to have you on, Carolyn. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. It's so lovely to be talking to you.
Well, first and foremost, I would love to hear, and I want you to share with the ladies who are listening, how on earth did you end up making this switch from the corporate world into your own business?
I mean, it was a really long process. I think like everyone, that fear of stepping into the unknown when you're in a comfortable corporate job it is a bit terrifying.
Yep.
And I did a few things along the way. I did a lot of things like as a side hustle to begin with. Mm-hmm. I did a food blog for a while where I worked out that I liked eating much more than I liked recipe development. And then I started working with someone and I said, because I work for not-for-profits, you become a jack of all trades. And one of the things I'd been helping with was Facebook ads. And they said, you can make money doing that. So then I started doing Facebook ads for people and started to make really good money off that, but absolutely hated it. It just was not for me. And so then I actually I was earning enough money to quit my job. I quit my job, did that for a while, and then thought, this is not working. Went back into corporate, got my head straight, worked out actually that I really like doing business models, using my accounting skills to help people get on top of their numbers. Mm-hmm. And so finally morphed into something that works for me and how I want to do business. And that's what I wanted to help others do, particularly after the Facebook ads debacle. Mm-hmm. So helping people avoid that situation. And I guess the other big thing was being an introvert. I just never felt like I really fitted in corporate. Mm-hmm. I think I said to when we were talking about this interview, I just felt like I kept trying to squish myself into being something that I just wasn't.
Yes. Did you, in some of the environments that you were in, did they have what I call the lovely cube farms? So you don't really have like high walls or anything just to kind of drown out some of the noise or the constant interruptions? Or was that like, you just had the open door and everybody would love to come in and chat?
I've had both. Okay. In the big accounting firms, particularly now, we had hot desking. So it wasn't even like a cubicle. It was just like you just rocked up and found a desk. In this very open plan area. So, it's interesting. I actually got quite good about blocking noise out. I don't struggle with that one as much as I think other introverts do.
Okay. Yeah, I know I've had different environments where sometimes that would be like, okay, everybody would just, again, part of what I did is, really as a psychotherapist and now as a coach is people just come in and just kind of like, hey, Nicole, let me tell you about what's going on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is so much from what I was doing.
I think I've learned to develop a very good don't talk to me vibe when I'm in these situations. Probably not seen as the friendliest person in the office, but also protected my energy. So
yeah, and it's funny because I think there's so many of us introverts, and again, that's like one of the preferences, and we know there's other kind of letters that come after that if they go for the Myers-Briggs type indicator. But it is interesting. Like people often say, and I've said on my other episodes, like I will have people walk by me like, "Hey, I was saying your name," or "You look like you're really angry when I was passing you," and totally in my own little world type of thing, and. It's like, no, I was good in my world. What do you need?
Exactly.
Too funny. Well, Carolyn, I want to know, what are the top 5 issues or struggles that you hear from the women who are introverts, but that are in a business, but they're trying to do all this stuff for themselves? What are some of the top 5 things, I guess, like you often hear from them, especially when you're helping with the models?
I think it's particularly with the models, there's so many people out there on the social media telling you that you have to do things a particular way, and that it doesn't consider what works with your personality. So a really good example is people, I think that introverts won't be good with one-on-one coaching. And so they think, I have to do a course where I don't have to talk to people all the time. But in actual fact, those courses often require you to do a lot of marketing and a lot of visibility. And it's in a lot of ways, it's much more energy sucking for introverts than a one-on-one conversation with someone. So I think that's one of the big things, is just listening to people who say, we've got this blueprint and you'll make money.
Yeah.
That doesn't take into account what their personal preferences are. And also what their values are. I think I really struggle with them. Even though I'm an accountant, I struggle with just having money as the focus of your business.
Right. Yep.
So I think that's a big one. Then a couple of the others are, I think, systems, that introverts don't think enough about the systems that go with the business model and how they can use those systems to, again, manage their energy. So they think, that if you put in place really good systems around contracts and not always having to do discovery calls with people, vetting people much better before you get on a discovery call with them, then that can be a real energy saver as well. Another really big one is boundaries and understanding. Yes. I mean, I'm sure you see this a lot.
Yes.
That just because you're working with someone doesn't mean they have access to you every single hour of the day when they have an issue.
Yes.
It's having a business model where you're really clear around how you work with people and what those boundaries are and how you're both going to do well in business, I think is a really, really big one. I probably don't have 5. They're probably the top 3. Okay. And then, there's other things around marketing. I think generally all introverts hate marketing. Or at least the way that it's sold to them.
Yeah, that's it, right? I think that's one of the big things. Kind of like first you were talking about systems and making sure that things work for you. I know I've had pushback on how I've kind of set up some of my one-on-one coaching, and people are like, don't say that or this. And I'm like, no. If they're already kind of weed themselves out before we even get to the call, I'm okay with that. Yeah. And there was, and like you're saying, there's so much of like, we'll do this blueprint. And if they're not looking at the temperament or the preferences, because I work a lot with the highly sensitive folks too. Yeah. It's like, you really do need to manage your energy. It's just done differently. And there is something I know I've had previous podcast episodes. You and I both know Sarah Santacroce, and she's talked quite a bit about the marketing and being able to do it differently and not making it so pushy. But also you do need to be visible. People do need to know that you exist, and marketing is part of your business, but there's a way that you can do it without, sucking your soul out when you do it. Yeah.
I think just that whole idea that you have to work with everyone.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. No. There are people who are not good fits for you, and you can put in really good systems to weed them out before they even get on a call with you.
And I think that goes back to what you're talking about. Those boundaries are so important to know. And sometimes even like what you were talking about, like the winding path you've had, I've had so many people have had on their kind of careers and callings and things over the years. Like you start to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And so sometimes if you're not sure, like, well, I'm going to try these boundaries, and then they may not work and you may need to tighten them up. You may need to loosen them. But just knowing that, having a good contract, knowing that, yes, here's when I'm accessible and when I'm not, because you're no good if you're burnt out to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things I did in my own business is I took Facebook Messenger off my phone and I said to my clients, email me, don't do Messenger. Because I find Messenger really messy. I lose things. I don't see people,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I just said that, and it was so much better when I didn't have my phone binging at me saying, someone's got an issue they want to talk to me about. I'm just like, not now.
Right. Yeah, there is something about certain platforms that they feel a little more intrusive, or stuff gets lost and you're like, I have no idea where that went.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting.
It is. And again, it's so much of that trial and error, but making sure that you're really also paying attention to your own energy level.
Yeah.
If you are consistently feeling drained, get curious, like, okay, what is draining me? Because I'm having a lot of bings and an email would be better. Yeah. Is it because email feels too intrusive and my inbox is always full? So I would much rather use like Voxer or some other platform. Great. Or I'm only available on these days, this many time of days, just staying really curious and then trying some of those things out.
I think being clear with people up front. I know one person who says, if you email her, you automatically get something back saying, I only work Mondays to Thursdays during these hours, and I will reply to you, next time I'm working. And it's just so clear and it's not offensive, and you don't think, this is a problem. You just know that that's when she's working and she's going to get back to you then.
Yes. Yep.
It's not complicated. I think that's the lovely thing about it.
Well, and it goes back to what you're saying too about systems, right? It's, I've had times where clients have said, hey, Nicole, if you could just let me know about this, or this. And I'm like, ooh, that would be like what you're saying, kind of an automatic reply, or I build it into the program, or I'm building it into the contract. Because I'm like, oh, thanks for that feedback. I hadn't thought of it that way. Or that would be better if I put it over here versus here. And then it's consistent all the way through.
Yeah.
Love that. And we do like the consistency of things for most things in life. So it helps.
Yes.
What are some of the lessons that you have learned about yourself through being an entrepreneur and being introverted?
One of the big things has been, I always had people telling me how hard it would be to work from home. And I think a lot of people have experienced this obviously in the last year. But actually how much I love it. And how much I get done when I don't let people interrupt me.
Yeah.
I think it's really, I don't think you realize how much time you lose when someone just comes up and pops up to your desk and says hello. It's a 10-minute chat, but then to get back into everything takes another good half an hour.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things, I think for me, one of the things I really struggle with is that marketing piece, and finding Sarah's work has been really great in terms of thinking about how I can better do it. And for me, I think I've discovered that actually I really, I've always thought of networking as being this horrible big thing where you go into a room, it's full of people just doing random stuff with business cards. And just learning about how to network with people one-on-one, and how much I enjoy getting to know people and learning about their business. I think that's been a really big one for me, that there are so many different ways to network, and that there is this really lovely way that I can do that's about making one-on-one connections with people that I really love and enjoy.
Yeah.
And has made that aspect much less intense and much more successful as well. It's been really interesting.
That's great. Yeah, instead of like speed dating for some of those
Yeah.
business network meetings, I've been to so many different kinds over the years, both when I worked in corporate and then being a therapist and then being, an entrepreneur, coach. And some of them like, oh my gosh, you're just total pitching. That's all you're doing versus
Yeah.
let's get to know you. I do want to hear about your business and like why you got into it and a little bit about you. But yeah, to have a whole group of people, it's like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other big thing I've learned is the power of collaboration.
Yes.
So one of the things that I do in my business and where I know Sarah from is the Introvert Marketing Bundle, where I bring together a whole group of people who do marketing and are introverts.
Mm-hmm.
And I bundle up their courses. People get it at a wonderful price, and it's run by introvert. The courses are all by introverts. So the methods they're teaching aren't, they're appropriate for introverts.
Yeah.
And there's a selection that people can choose from. But I've just found from just running that bundle, I've made connections, through Sarah to you and talking to someone in a couple of weeks who's looking at becoming a client through one of the other participants in the bundle. So it's been really lovely that this collaboration and getting to know people actually then helps to grow your business.
Yeah.
And to help you find ideal clients who are obviously other introverts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I like doing the podcast as well. I know Sarah and I have talked about that before. It's one, it stretches me out of my own comfort zone, but I get to meet people who are doing things that, one, I find fascinating, a topic I find interesting, but also a potential to actually, like you're saying, collaborate. And they really can, whether it's collaboration or referrals, things like that. It's just quite fun. And what a lovely idea of having like a whole big bundle that you can put together of all these folks. And yeah, it's like it's truly marketed for introverts. It's not all big and pushy and flashy and like, hey, here's how you got to do this. It's like, yeah, no.
And a big part of my business as well is amplifying other introverts' voices. Like I really want people to see that there are other introverts out there doing amazing things in business, not just the loud extroverts.
Yeah.
And I know from the bundle that people have picked up, coaching clients from being part of the bundle. And I just think that's such a, that's as exciting for me as me getting clients from it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to go back where you talked about, I remember being where you like had to refocus. Like it's interesting being able to work from home. And it's funny, I've had various clients. I've been doing online stuff for about 5 years. And for my therapy practice, I had an office. And then with COVID, it went all virtual. And I'm like, I was planning on going virtual. My coaching's always been just virtual. People are like, don't you miss having an office? I'm like, no. One, I don't have to be in traffic. Two, there's not other dynamics of different people of sharing, office building space, things like that. It's like, it's just easy. And I work with a lot of high achieving folks. And so they're busy. And so they're not having to drive across town or put stuff down. It's like I get to meet them in cars, parks, wherever they're at. And it just works for them. Yeah, I absolutely love just working from home.
I think it's lovely that, I don't just want to be at home. I'm not that much of a hermit, but I get to choose when I go out and meet people, whether it's at a coffee shop or, I can go out and meet someone for coffee. Probably not, in Australia, I could probably go out for coffee and meet someone face to face. I know a lot of people still can't do that. But yeah, it's I have choices about when I meet people face to face rather than it being forced upon me.
Yeah. Yep. Feels like it's a little more in control, huh?
Yeah.
And then what you were saying about not being interrupted, I remember working in corporate, like I said earlier, and having just cubicles where people could walk in. And you're right, there's actually brain science behind it. Takes that good 20 to 30 minutes for us to get refocused. And that's part of what being in flow or the Pomodoro effect, that's part of where they've derived it, where you just do intently for 20, 30 minutes, just focusing on one thing, because the brain gets moving in a direction. And if it gets interrupted, it has to literally refocus. That's why people say, oh, I'm really good at multitasking. It's like, no, you're not. Your brain just literally switched gears, switched a path. And so it takes you a little bit to get back on track again. Same thing when people interrupt. It's like, especially if you're doing numbers, right? Putting systems in. It's like, wow, I remember in accounting days, a gazillion years ago, people would interrupt me. Hey, Nicole, I need this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, get that done. And then what was I working on again?
Like as women, we women in particular, we really do ourselves a disservice by saying we're good at multitasking.
Yes.
It's almost like a badge of honor when actual fact
you're not.
You're not. You're just letting people interrupt you,
mm-hmm.
and you're not getting to focus on something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something we really need to move away from. Like, focus is really good. Multitasking is not as productive.
Yeah, agree. Well, that go back to your boundaries, right? Of saying, hey, I would love to help you right now, but give me another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or I can meet with you in an hour or tomorrow at this time. Throw out a solution about when you could meet, a possibility, versus just continue to allow that constant interruption. If they're trying to do that.
It's really hard in those cubicle farms, though, to say, someone's already come up to you and interrupted. At least with an office, you can shut a door. They're not good work environments.
Well, and if you are in a work environment, one option you have is either put like a note on the outside of your cube. I've encouraged people to do that. I used to do that. Or if I used to have people popping in, I actually would say, hey, I got to get up and leave. If they were just nonstop talking, I say I'm in the middle of something and they wouldn't stop, I literally would leave my space. I'm like, It's like, you can't continue to do this. I've got stuff to do. So
I've seen people do good things with headphones as well.
Yes.
That they basically give the message, if I've got my headphones on, don't talk to me.
Yep.
But it's not easy. That's why for me, I don't think I'd ever have really fitted into corporate, and that's why building a business that works with my personality has just been such a delight to do. Like, to feel like I'm not trying to fit into something that I don't really belong in anymore, and to build something that works with me.
Mm-hmm.
And every introvert's different, so every business is going to look different.
Mm-hmm.
Some introverts love public speaking, and others don't. It's working out exactly what works for your particular form of introversion.
Correct.
I just think it's really exciting to see when people start to realize, I can do things that work for me, not the way that some loud internet person said I had to do it.
We have the joke when some of my colleagues, we talk about, being a star shaped and trying to fit into that circle. It's like, my pointy sides just don't quite fit into that. All right. I've got another question for you. What are some of the reasons you think either prevent or maybe even stop introverts from building a business that works for them? Just on the things we're talking about, you're like, I built this and it really works for me. What do you think stops people from doing that?
And I look back at a number of my friends who are like this and they're still in corporate.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's, and particularly, those of us, so I'm Generation X.
Mm-hmm.
And so the internet's sort of come around while we've been working. And I think they still see that you have to market. I talk to my friends and they talk about cold calling and all sorts of other marketing methods that are just really horrible for introverts. And I think so they don't leave their corporate job because they think they're going to have to do cold calling. Like, that's the big barrier that they have.
Yeah.
And then I think for people who do actually take the leap, it's just they don't see the right role models out there that show them that they can do it their way.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a lot of introverts out there who are really successful in business, but quite a few of the big names, either they're introverts, but they pretend to be extroverts, or they're extroverts. They don't see these quieter people succeeding, and so don't realize there are other ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the really sad one is people who stick in corporate because they think, they're going to have to do marketing like was done in the 90s rather than how you can do it now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't be in business if I had to cold call people.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, that's like direct sales. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you've hit that point of, the fear really holds them back. You don't know what you don't know. And if the only thing that you know is, you have to do it this one way, and then you allow that fear versus start to ask questions, talk to other people who maybe are running businesses, have their own business, And then you just start taking small steps, kind of like what you said at the beginning, what you did when you were still working in corporate, but you had a lot of these other kind of side gigs going on. And I've said over and over in my podcast with different folks and solo episodes, it's like, I'm always about, using your critical thinking skills. But for me, whenever I've switched things, I've had a job, I've been doing something, right, that's bringing in income, and then I'll start small before I take the leap, because I want to have money coming in versus just like, well, I'll quit and kind of see. It's like, nope, I play a little safer that way. So you get to test stuff out.
Yeah, I think as well, it's just, and everything's changing so quickly, just the fact that we're on a podcast interview together in 2 separate countries.
I know.
That wouldn't have been possible not that long ago. Like, it blows my mind how much things have changed in a relatively short period of time.
Right. And that's the thing, right? With technology, it really does, the whole thing we say often is that everything is so sped up. And so many of my introverted and highly sensitive folks, they're just like, oh, and pandemic is awful as it has been, and so many losses and economic issues and all of that. Not discounting that. They're just like, the world slowed down for a moment and it felt good. It's like you could palpably feel a pause.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, there it is. So
it's been weird being in Australia where it hasn't slowed down to quite the same extent, or at least not for as long a period of time.
Yep.
And I was talking to a friend in the US the other day, and she was describing, I think, using hand sanitizer or something like that. And I'm like, oh, you guys are still doing that. That's right. And we're still doing it a bit, but not to the same extent. It's been really, I feel like we've become a bit of the hermit nation, and in some ways that suits me.
So you might not have had the nice exhale that different parts of the world have, but it's like the cocooning part of just like, we're good here. And so our world can be less loud and chaotic. Love it.
It's been interesting to be in Australia where it's quite a different experience, I think, to what a lot of other people have had. But I do think the world has changed. Just the fact that working from home is going to become, I think, will remain being a more common option for people. Even if it's 2 or 3 days a week, I think will make life a lot easier for introverts, and that makes me very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is something about just being able to be at home. And again, most people have good work ethics in the sense like they, if you're doing what you like to do, you're going to do the work. But to be able to pause and throw the laundry in, or have the home cooked meal that you want, or take a moment to just kind of play outside for a little bit and then come back in if you've got to work within inside a building or whatever. It just, there's a give and take, and there's trust. I know one thing I found when I've worked with like managers who've talked about, well, I can't trust my people. I'm like, then you don't have the right people working for you.
Yeah.
Because if you've got some folks who love being at home and their productivity is going up, something's going well. Don't punish them in the sense of they've got to come back or they've got to do it this way. And you watch that productivity or their morale go down. It's like, work with them, not against them.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think introverts often struggle with hiring people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that managing. So when you're, an introvert business, I think having, whether you're going to have staff or not in terms of your business model is really important.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think so many introverts have been put off managing people because it's done in an extroverted way in corporate, when in actual fact they can bring a much kinder way in their own business.
Yes.
But they've had such a bad experience with managing staff in corporate that it's just like it's a no-go. So they have to come up with a business model that doesn't require that, or at least gives them time to get comfortable again with leading people in a way that works for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I know you've tapped on saying, there are definitely some very successful introverts out there. And some of them that I know from afar, I don't know them personally, but they've talked about like, I only hire part-time. I don't hire full-time people. And I'm like, oh, that sounds lovely. right?
Yeah.
Like I've been the one woman show for a long time, and now I'm starting to, I've had like VAs here and there, but then I'm like, I'm not even consistent enough to know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with them. And so I'm
Yep.
gaining better understanding of what it is I need, why I need it, but I won't be hiring, 3 or 4 different people. It's like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
So again, knowing that you can design it that works for you and your business. Yeah.
And I think often outsourcing is better because, if I hire a graphic designer, I expect them to know what they're doing, but they don't require me really to be managing them. Like I just ask them to do something. And I think that's another way of managing your introvert energy. Whereas if you're hiring a staff member, I feel like you feel like there's more of an obligation to mentor them, to work with them. Whereas if you're just outsourcing, it's not a drain on your energy and you can put it somewhere else.
I like that distinction. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's very true. Yeah.
I think particularly if you're hiring experts, And, if you want to do mentoring and build someone up, then, maybe just pick one person. Don't try and have a whole staff. You're trying to look after, get the balance right for you.
Right. Well, then let me just pivot just for a little bit then, because the other question I have goes along this same line. It's like, why is it really just so daggone important that women who are listening, they actually have a business that works for their temperament, their preferences? Why is that just so important? Why, again, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but I really want to hone this in.
Yeah, I think for me, it really came up for me when I was running Facebook ads. And when you're running Facebook ads, you have to be checking them 7 days a week.
Oh.
And I just, and while you might not be doing a lot on all of those 7 days, you have to be doing something every 7 days in case, Facebook has gone crazy, as it often does. Clients are stressing about that. And it just, they're perhaps not getting the results they want because, Facebook's ads don't always work. And I just realized, actually, I can't do this. I need a job where I need a business where I can take, say 3 days off a week to recharge, get my energy back. I also really like having a day where I just get to create and do my own thing, writing or whatever that is. So I think I was exhausted at the end of that period of running Facebook ads.
Yeah.
And, starting to feel burnout. And that's why it's so important to do what works for you. And sometimes, Facebook ads can work for introverts. Maybe you're just going to do 2 or 3 hours in the morning and then you have the afternoon off to do your own thing. But I found that I needed a whole day where I wasn't having to think about clients and client work, or actually more than one day. So thinking about that so you don't lead yourself to burnout.
Yeah.
And what that looks like varies from person to person.
Yeah, to me, to do that 7 days out of the week, I'm sitting there thinking, one, it just gives me goosebumps to not like healthy goosebumps, like, ooh, that's really like serendipitous. Yeah. It's more like, yee. Yeah. Because you don't ever shut your brain off, right?
It really did feel like a job, like I'd created a job for myself rather than a business that I loved.
Yeah. And what you've been talking about, right, that being able to help other introverts put their systems into place and put processes into place and really know their numbers, because I think that's so empowering, especially for women, to really know their numbers. I can't tell you how many times women I've heard like, well, I can't do numbers. I'm like, if you can add and subtract, you can do your numbers. It's so much about practice and asking questions. And it doesn't mean you don't want to hire like an expert or something to kind of go over things or maybe manage it, but just knowing the basics can really help things along and not feel so intimidating.
Yeah, I think it's getting your prices right is so important as an introvert. So you're not having to do, 20 coaching calls in a week just to cover your bills. Like that's not sustainable for you.
Yeah.
You have to have prices that mean you can only, you only have to do 5 calls a week or whatever feels good for you. But if you don't know your numbers, you don't know how much you need to earn to actually, you don't know what your prices have to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
It's really the fear around numbers. I don't quite know where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is that people are being taught that they don't like maths.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you say, it's just adding and subtracting. It's not complicated maths at all.
But, and I know in our country, there is a division between girls and boys regarding boys are better in math and girls are, even though scientifically that is not true. And trying to get girls more involved in like STEM and everything else to help kind of create that. The mathematics, I was in some course a few years back, just kind of, I don't know, learning about stuff. And they said, honestly, the brain actually, again, analyzes and takes math stuff very different than English. And I was always good in math, but not in English. And so it was just like, oh, I did some of the harder stuff. Sometimes I got it, sometimes I didn't, but I just liked how the equations worked.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's whether it's, being taught by your upbringing, being taught by the culture, being told by, the paradigm system itself of saying you just can't do it because of your, your gender. It's like, yeah, no, absolutely. You can do this. Yeah.
And for me, part of it as well that I sometimes find frustrating is we constantly tell women, oh, it's your mindset. That's why your pricing's too low. And there's always an element of mindset in there, definitely. Yeah. But it's also, you've actually never been shown how to do your prices so you make a profit. Mm-hmm. Like you've never been shown that skill. So why do you think you'd be able to do it? Why is it just your mindset that's saying you can't do this?
Yeah.
No one's actually shown you. Mm-hmm. And, we wouldn't say that to someone about building their email list. We wouldn't say, oh, that's your mindset issue, the reason you can't build your email list. Why you can't understand MailChimp. It's like, actually, no, you just haven't been shown how to use MailChimp, but we don't do the same with numbers.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Mindset does still play a big part in it as well. But if you don't have the basic skills,
right,
you just you're further hamstrung.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ladies, I've got to tell you, Carolyn has this great quiz on her website. I'm going to jump really quick, Carolyn, to that because I took it and I just had to laugh when I got my results. I was like, So her website is called quietlyextraordinary.com. And don't worry, I will have it on the show notes and all of her social media links and everything. But she's got a quiz that, again, there's a big link or a button even on your website, correct? That takes them right to the Introvert Business Quiz. Okay.
Yeah.
So this quiz will tell you kind of whether you're really doing the business that kind of works for you, kind of not at a high level. But I laughed because I took it. I'm like, oh, I've had this feedback before, trying to be an extrovert as an introvert. I was like, yep. So I know there's still more like tweaking that I can do in my business and how I run it. But there's times like, but I love to connect with people, but I still have this part where I'm like, but I've got to push like others. And I'm like, yeah, you really don't. So I have to keep unraveling all of that as well. But just cracked me up when I got it. I was like, yeah, okay.
But I really hope that the quiz provides some prompts for people as well. Like even do the quiz and not sign up for my list. It's perfectly optional. Hopefully you'll sign up for the list and I share more tips on how to make your business introvert friendly. But I just hope the quiz starts to prompt people when they even the question, it's like, oh, I could do this differently.
Yeah. Well, it does. I think that's the beauty of quizzes, right? It makes you stop and kind of think a little bit on certain, like I've got one that it's like thinking about different areas of your life, and yours is specifically just about the introversion in your business. And it's just like, oh, what? Really? So then having tips that come later on as you sign up and go forward is just like, oh, how helpful that it really is unlearning so much of, they're saying it's so much of an extrovert world. It's like, no, it's not. Stats show it's about 50-50, at least in our country. Yes. There's even more introverted countries.
Yes. Funny, isn't it, how extroverts have just been able to meld the world to work for them.
Well, and I think so much of it, like we were talking about, it's the bolder you are, right? You just get heard more because you're out there more. And when you get heard more, you get seen more, and that kind of gets around. And then all of a sudden that becomes the only way to do it. And it's like, no, there are so many different ways that you can run your business. And like this whole thing is like to me, you sound like you have really been following your soul in the sense of just really tuning into you and finding what works for you. And not negotiating that anymore. Like, it's not, yes, the paycheck is nice, this and that. It's like, to me, that's kind of like, it's the both and. You want to be paid for what you do, but it's not your driving factor. It's also like my health and my well-being is a big contributor to all of this as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Carolyn, I'm curious for you. I ask often my guests some things that they do for themselves. So what are some of your like self-care practices that you do for you so that you don't burn out like the Facebook ad job kind of was?
The big one for me is making sure that I take at least 2 days away from my business every week. And, I don't get it perfectly every week, but it's pretty good most weeks. Mm-hmm. And part of that is I often work Sundays and take Friday off.
Yes.
Because I find then that I can do activities, just simple things like grocery shopping, where there are less people around. And for me, it actually makes a huge difference to how I feel. Like it's a much calmer experience. I don't have those days where I feel like I'm battling 500 people to try and buy a piece of, loaf of bread.
Yep.
So just something as simple as that. And I walk my dogs every morning, and I think I don't listen to anything while I'm walking them. I don't try and squeeze in any business or podcasts or anything while I'm walking them. It's really just about me getting outside with them, seeing what's happening in my neighborhood, and just trying to disconnect from everything, except them and what I'm seeing on my walk and hearing on my walk.
Being in the moment.
So really trying to, practice mindfulness when I'm walking the dogs is a really big one.
Yeah. It's huge.
So they're probably the two biggest. One of the things I need to work on is cutting back on the amount of coffee I drink, I think. I need to cut back on that and calm my nerves just a little bit more. But I do love my coffee, so that's a really tough one to do.
I'm laughing because I hear that. There's a few guests who are like, yes, I love it. And I know it doesn't like my system as much.
Yes.
Oh, it's so funny. And I had to laugh when you said you switched kind of your weekend between Friday and Saturday, because that's my Monday. Right. Yep. It does make a big difference to do some of your errands on the quote work week when many people are at the offices. Oh, it's like, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Big difference.
It's amazing what it does for your nervous system. For not to be around people who are so rushed, because they're obviously trying to squeeze everything into the weekend. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they do a 5-day-a-week job.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You're around calmer people while you're doing your own stuff.
There's more pleasantry when you're standing in line to pay. There's a little more chatter or smiles versus, get away, hurry up. Why do you have coupons?
Yep. People are just a bit kinder.
Yeah, they are. Well, is there anything I missed before we say our goodbyes? Again, ladies, I will have all of Carolyn's information on the show notes, but is there anything that I've missed that you wanted to share? Or one, you just really, to me, you're doing work that really helps amplify so many more introverted voices, which is awesome and so needed in this world. So appreciate that you're doing this work. And I'm just curious if there's anything else that you wanted to say that I've missed.
I don't think so. It's really just about believing that it really is possible to create a business that works with your personality. Mm-hmm. There's a way of doing it for everyone.
Yeah. Again, and so much of what you said from the very beginning of the podcast is it's all of us breaking through these mindsets over these stories, as I like to say, that there's only one way and it's the loud way or it's the cookie cutter way or it's the blueprint way. It's like, well, you can take some of those things, but you can also morph it as well. So, well, Carolyn, thank you again for coming on today, for sharing your wisdom and even your own journey and how you got to where you are and making an impact in the world, and that the way that you're doing. You may be, the quiet introvert, but at the same time, you're making a big impact all across the world. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you for listening. And if you're interested to find out what your inner power is as an animal, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/quiz. Till next time.